Good morning. Good morning, Cedarfield residents in our fellowship hall and on live stream 971. Welcome to the first speaker of this year's Cedarfield Forum Speaker Series. It is an honor, a privilege today to welcome a familiar face from our metro community. Our guest speaker has spent 16 years bringing us the stories that shape our lives and keep us informed with clarity, fairness, and dedication. As a trusted local news anchor, he has guided us through many important events and given a voice to issues that matter most. This morning, he joins us to share insights on one of the cornerstones of our country, elections. All of us look forward to November and the vote. Bill has brought a camera woman with him, Enza. She will be moving around the room, taking photos from your backs. So let us welcome the anchor of Channel 6 News, Bill Fitzgerald. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. It is a real pleasure. As I was telling Barbara, Sally Wood, whom you may know is recovering from surgery and a fall, invited me, I want to say 9 months ago. I was moderating a discussion post-election at University of Richmond, part of the Osher Continuing Education Series, and Sally came up to me afterwards and said, "Would you come speak to Cedarfield?" I said, "Of course." And as I just explained to Barbara, September 16th, today, was going to be a red letter date for me no matter what, because we had hoped at Channel 6, at WTVR, to host a gubernatorial debate, which I would moderate. As of a month ago, the only debate prospect was our debate at Virginia State University, to which one candidate had accepted, and we were just waiting for the normal timeline for the other campaign to decide. So as I looked as recently as 4 weeks ago, September 16th was going to be super special, because I'm talking to the folks at Cedarfield, and then I can say, oh, and guess what? Tonight at 7, you'll see me moderate a debate. But I'm not going to say that because it's not happening. So there is a debate, as you may know, so that is good news that Norfolk State came through afterwards a few weeks ago. Both candidates have accepted, so October 9th at Norfolk State University, on Wavy, I'm not sure of the channels here in Richmond. Our debate was going to be carried in every market. I presume that's so for the Norfolk debate. Anyway, I digress. So as Barbara mentioned, I've been here 16 years in Richmond, the evening anchor. I have a wife and 3 children, 2 20-something knucklehead boys, and a 13-year-old girl, so who is in her last year of middle school. I want to just backtrack a little bit and give some of my background, and then hopefully pull all the strands together to talk about the election and, of course, the importance of voting. I started out at a cable station in the New York City area on Long Island. I was starting late because I had done other things. I'd been a teacher for 3 years. I had done some acting, done some commercial work. I was thinking all the time that I was going to go to law school. I didn't want to go to law school. I was trying to find anything like, what do I do now? How do I earn a living? And at one point, I was listening to an Italian pop song, of all things, in the middle of which there was a clip from Tom Brokaw, in which, and I was almost 30 years old at this point, I heard him say something, we go to Afghanistan where the guns continue to fire, blah, blah, and that was during the Soviets' intervention, as it were, in Afghanistan. And I thought, TV news, oh my gosh, I've been a teacher, kind of a news junkie, been on camera. I never even thought of TV news. So I went back and got a master's degree in journalism. To do TV news, you don't need a master's degree, but I didn't have a background. So I went back and got my master's in journalism. I started out after that cable station on Long Island, where you carry all your equipment, you go to ribbon cuttings, go to schools, go to little events, and you put together a reel showing your greatest hits, which admittedly were pretty limited at that time in the late 90s on Long Island. But from there, I got a job as a reporter in Birmingham. Birmingham is starkly different than New York City. I'm a Philly boy. I grew up in Philly, and as I mentioned, was in New York City up till my mid-30s, and then working at a cable station on Long Island. This job came up at the NBC-owned station. So while Birmingham is a size 40 market, and every TV market across the country is ranked, the more people that see you, obviously the higher the advertising dollars, the higher the salaries, et cetera. Birmingham was a size 41 market. That was a pretty good jump, even though, as my wife would say, it's Birmingham and it's going to be an adjustment. We were there 5 years. I was a reporter for 3 years. And again, an older than normal starting reporter, because when we got to Birmingham in '99, I was 37 years old. And after a few years, they made me a reporter anchor, anchoring on the weekends. From there, because this station was owned by NBC, they pulled me up to MSNBC in Jersey at the time. Now they're in much nicer confines in Rockefeller Center, but at the time they were in Jersey. I don't recommend Secaucus as a tourist stop, but anybody that's familiar with the New York City area already knows that. And in which I was the overnight anchor, breaking news, et cetera. And I kept thinking, oh, I love breaking news. I love being able to put it all together. Does it have to be at 3 in the morning? Because I feel like I'd be much stronger if it were 3 in the afternoon. But I did that for 3 years. And then from there, took the main anchor role in Raleigh, similar to what I'm doing now. And that was 2007. Then the Great Recession came. And after my guaranteed contract of 2 years came up, the company that owned our station in Raleigh also owns the RTD, or owned the RTD. I was having some tough times. So they did not renew my contract. So all of a sudden, in the middle of the Great Recession, I'm without a job. My wife is a cancer survivor. I've got, at that point, 2 kids. And I thought, gee, this is not good. So we did have some savings that got us through. And within 6 months, the Richmond job came open. And I did not know much about Richmond. As I mentioned, come from Philly. That's Philadelphia more formally. And we would drive to Florida. Richmond's vistas from 95, not spectacular. You don't necessarily see those in the Chamber of Commerce brochures. So when this job came up, I said, Richmond, I obviously know it from history. It turned out to be about the best blessing you could imagine. When you're in TV news, it's kind of like minor league baseball, where, you know, you're hoping to play for the Phillies, Yankees, whoever. And this opened up, and my wife and 3 children, we had our daughter was born here, I could not be happier. So everything turned out perhaps the way it's supposed to. When I went to graduate school to get my jump start in TV news, the cameras were about this big. The battery pack that you carried with it, equally heavy. The tripod weighed more than this dais. So there was a lot of heavy, bulky equipment, and that was state of the art. At the time, somebody came to speak at the journalism school and said, someday the cameras are going to be this big. And everybody's like, wow, that's going to be great. Think of all the mobility you have with smaller cameras and better batteries. Well, now, of course, as I tell students when I speak at schools, this device in my pocket, as obnoxious as it is, and we all know it's always calling for our attention, this is a news device because we air video from people's cell phones all the time. You're on the scene. You've seen something. Hopefully not a fatal crash, but something. And that's all of a sudden a way to communicate, a way to do the news. So it is so dramatically different just in the 30 years or so, 35 years since I started in this business or started thinking about this business. Now, having said that, that means all the news sources, the places where we get our news, are all of a sudden infinite in a way, because everybody has a shot at conveying something, at saying, I saw this, here's a clip. So what that means is and you remember this because I do, from waiting to hear Walter Cronkite at 6:30 or whatever time it was, to all of a sudden, oh, I already got that at 10 o'clock this morning. Why would I sit around till 6:30 and wait to see it again? I already know it. Plus, my phone's been pinging me all day, giving me updates. So why that is significant is all of a sudden, there are infinite sources to choose from. Who are you going to listen to? They're all competing for your attention. The tendency, it's not even a tendency, we all want to hear from people we trust. Who's selecting the stories? Who is hopefully communicating both sides of a story? That is something that is dramatically different than it was also 35 years ago. So the equipment has changed, and I think because of the equipment and technological revolution, all of a sudden, there's a whole lot more out there. So, and what that has also meant is, it's meant the demise of certain forms of media. Think of print. This week, I think it was Monday, or was it Friday, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution announced, we're not printing anymore, we're just online. Now, you may not be familiar with that newspaper, but that's a big-time newspaper. And now it's strictly online. Just today, the Richmond Times-Dispatch announced more layoffs. They have said their subscription print went from 100,000 when I got here, or after I was here, 2012, to 18,000 print subscribers today. Online, I think it's 30. So the people subscribing to the RTD, minuscule. When I got here in 2009, the eyeballs on my 11 o'clock p.m. news show, just the eyeballs, whether they're watching us, Channel 12, Channel 8, double the eyeballs that are watching now. We have half the pie. The pie is half the size of what it was when I got here. So I'm mentioning all of these things, both my personal journey and the technological changes, the shrinking audience, the shrinking of news organizations, every TV journalist, just like every print journalist knows, the parent company, and we're owned by a company that owns 60 stations, is trying to cut costs. Every company wants to do that, and every company should to a certain degree. But it's become a challenge for journalists to cover every area they used to. The RTD cuts today was the reporter for Henrico, the reporter for Chesterfield, the reporter for, I want to say Hanover, I'll have to look at my notes, and a sports reporter and a copy editor. So those areas, Henrico, right where you live, will now have, I think, a little less in-depth coverage. But it's the economics at stake here. So if you understand that there's so many sources, you may also be getting your news from what we call social media. It's not just whether you watch cable news, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, whether you watch ABC, NBC, CBS. You may also be watching your internet feed, your Instagram feeds, your Facebook feeds. Maybe you have TikTok. Wouldn't that be something? How many people here have TikTok? I don't even know how to do it. The young kids at the station, if I need to put something on TikTok, she says, just sit still for a minute and say this, and I can put the story that I worked on TikTok. I have no idea how it works, but I know it's a lot of moving around, a lot of music. But anyway, many people, a staggering number of people under 30. I think it's like, I apologize, I saw the percentage. I think it's about 60% get their news from social media. So that means it's not somebody like me who has been all day working on putting together a show. How are we going to put the stories together? How do we stack the stories of importance? And then how do we present each of these stories? It's something vastly different, somebody hopefully trustworthy, but we don't know. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully you know if you watch certain social media feeds, yeah, I get all my info from Facebook because, I like it for this reason and that reason, and that may be true. My point is, it's vastly different. Polls used to show, and I would say, when I say used to, as of the last few years, overall media trust, as you no doubt have heard, has declined. By some miracle, local TV news anchors were at least among the highest of those that were trusted. Maybe it's your weather person, maybe it's your news person. Your local news miraculously enjoyed at least a certain measure of trust. That's already a few years old. I hope it's still true, but I'm not sure. That was as of, I think, 2022, right after the pandemic. So if you know any of these terms that apply to social media, a hot take, trolling, canceling, this is the noise that's out there. A hot take is something happens, instantly there's a pundit, an opinion maker, posting an opinion online. Is it measured? Is it balanced? Or is it making you mad? Is it provoking you to do something? So all of these things are happening. It's a lot out there, a lot of activity, a lot of noise, hopefully a lot of good content, but it's vastly different than it was 30 or 40 years ago. So as I mentioned, today was going to be a special day. I was really hoping to be here and say, yes, tonight you're going to see me moderate the governor's debate, the gubernatorial debate at Virginia State. But I still get to come here, so it's still a red letter day. Thank you. As we get closer to the election, you're going to see more and more ads if you happen to watch television or even in your internet feed. It's obviously obnoxious, but I have to acknowledge we are the beneficiaries of some of that because despite all these things I just said about social media, about the proliferation of other sources to get your news, TV is still hugely important in getting the political message out. At least the candidates' campaigns think so, because they buy all these ads. So as we approach this election, as we do any election, you think about the issues. You may think about the candidates. I like this person, I don't like this person. I know a TV reporter who once told a political candidate for president that he was a fan of that candidate, and he rolled up his sleeve and showed a tattoo of that candidate's name on his arm. I would say that reporter is compromised. I would say that reporter is not just compromised, he's not going to get the respect of anybody, and the last person that's going to respect him is the candidate he so cheerfully showed his tattoo to. So if there's, among the things I have learned, do not hitch your wagon to a personality, to an individual. You know what the issues are that are important to you. It may be abortion, it may be immigration, it may be Social Security. In fact, our partner for the debate that is not happening, sadly, was AARP. So while we had not gotten to the point of formulating the questions, we would have had a panel of 2 questioners as well. You know, what's the sequence of questions going to be? Almost certainly, Social Security, veterans benefits, what kind of real estate tax reductions, or et cetera. The issues that hit your pocketbook would have been top of mind and among the primary questions. So as you ponder pulling the lever, and by the way, early voting starts Friday, think about the issues first. It's so hard, but when I talked about all the sources that you have to get your news from, you want to go to the source you trust, and you do. But are you being challenged to think about it from the other perspective? If I feel a certain way about an issue, the last person I want to spend my time reading, because boy, there is so much to read in the morning when you get up, and what happened overnight, and what's the latest on this and that, the last person I want to read is somebody that is zealously over the top promoting something that I may agree with, because I need to know what are the big points on the other side. If somebody wants to change the Social Security formula, that is, maybe tax up to a higher level than the current cap of the tax, because we're going to have a shortfall in the Social Security Trust Fund, or it actually goes away by 2032, 34, whatever the latest prediction is. So we have to do something to fix it. So you need to know, well, what's bad about doing it this way? And if a cheerleader that you're following isn't giving you that, then you're not getting the full story. Because despite the drama, despite this is the worst person in the world, vote for me, it's pretty much the country and the state, it's pretty much on an even keel, goes this way a little bit, goes that way a little bit. Drama gets people angry. Drama gets people maybe to the polls. But do yourself a favor and make sure you know the measured points on the other side. Now, as to the election that's coming up, I was taking a look at a guide. Someone who helps me immensely in any election is Bob Holsworth. We call him Dr. Bob. He is a swami of all things electoral. He's, I think, pretty much down the road, maybe down the middle of the road, in terms of whether he would have any bias at all, because he's a straight shooter. And consultants on both sides of the aisle use his services. So he had said, well, check the latest money numbers on the candidates. So as you know, for governor, Abigail Spanberger for the Democrats, Winsome Earl Sears for the Republicans, As of the last quarter, which ended 2 weeks ago, August 31st, Spanberger has 12 million on hand. Winsome Earl Sears has 5 million on hand, so a big discrepancy in terms of cash on hand. And as far as the last quarter, Spanberger raised 14 and spent 17, so she had a bigger nest egg or whatever going into that quarter than she does now, but still a significant financial advantage. Winsome Earl Sears raised 5.3 and spent 4.8. So the money, they always say, follow the money. Where's the money going? And that is an indicator sometimes, and I'm sure there are exceptions, of course, to every rule. Follow the money, that's an indicator of what the market thinks is going to happen. For the lieutenant governor's race, Ghazala Hashmi has 2.2 million on hand, John Reed 317,000. Hashmi raised 1.4, spent almost 500, so she added to her nest egg a little bit. John Reed raised 374, spent 220. So in both of those candidates' races, both governor and lieutenant governor, the Democrats have a financial advantage. And as far as the Attorney General's race, and this one is really interesting because Jason Miyares is significantly being outfunded, outraising his competitor, Jay Jones. Right now, Miyares has 7 million on hand, and Jay Jones has 3.7 million. So almost a 2-to-1 advantage in money on hand. On the other hand, Jay Jones raised 4 million this last quarter, spent 1.5. So much of what Jay Jones has now was just raised. So does that mean the money's coming in now? Miyares is still raising money and still doing a good job raising money. So I say that because we all know that Virginia's election follows a presidential election. And invariably, I was here for my first election was Bob McDonnell, Creed Eads, and that was right after the Obama election the year before. And invariably, the incumbent White House party has a headwind, a stiff headwind in the Virginia election. So you would expect, for example, Bob McDonnell to have kind of an advantage over Creed Eads simply because there's a Democrat in the White House. And that has been true for every election. In 2016, when President Trump was first elected, Ralph Northam had a kind of built-in advantage because of the response to the White House occupant, just like it was with Obama. Same thing happened most recently with Biden having been elected in 2020. Governor Youngkin, Biden won Virginia by almost 10 points. And Youngkin won by, I think it was 1.5 to 2.5. I apologize for not knowing exactly, but a huge reversal of what had just happened the year before. So if all those trends hold true, you would think, and the money seems to suggest that maybe it's true, that Spanberger would have an advantage simply because Winsome Earl Sears is going to have something of a headwind because there's a Republican in the White House. So Virginia is kind of funny that way. I will also say, and I am no Bob Holsworth in terms of understanding all these political realities, but I would also say that Virginia is kind of quirky because Virginia is independent. And whether it's blue or red or purple, I think there's always a wild card because Virginia does things its own way. I say that because, as always, turnout matters. Who is going to vote? When it's a governor's race, it's important to Virginians, but it's not a presidential race that gets everybody out to the polls. So who turns out is going to be crucial to this race. I mean, it always is, but if your base is stirred up, they turn out. If your base is angry, they turn out. So those are the trends. I would say you might see, and Bob is the one that would tell me this, you could see sort of ballot splitting, meaning it may seem that most people just go and say, I'm a Republican, right down the line. I'm a Democrat, right down the line. But you might see something like people coming out to vote for Miaris who don't necessarily care for the candidates above or not passionate about it anyway. So nobody knows what's going to happen. There are, as I mentioned, what it seemed to be some advantages so far, but you've got a debate coming up October 9th. You've got whatever we've got, less than 8 weeks. 8 weeks till Election Day. Yeah, that's right, 8 weeks. Math is not my thing. I was an English major. Anyway, so I think that's most of what I wanted to say. There have been no polls in Virginia since the Charlie Kirk assassination, so it's not yet clear how much of an impact that will have on the Virginia electorate. As I mentioned, early voting starts Friday, and it's hard to read the tea leaves of, we kind of know who is voting, but obviously don't know how people vote until Election Day. So I want to open it up to questions. Hopefully I'll have some answers. I can just tell you what it's like from my perspective, but yeah, so early voting Friday, and the election is November 4th. I think it's the 4th. I'll know soon. I will know in time. Trust me. So, are there any questions out there? Anybody like to? All right. I guess we'll bring a microphone over to you, sir.
You have to speak loud. Me speak loud?
Yes, I'll do so. Yes.
In terms of the media landscape, do you know what the current state of the Murdoch Trust lawsuit in Utah?
The question is about the Murdoch Trust lawsuit. The children of Rupert Murdoch in a debate, I guess. I don't. I know just what I've read recently was that Lachlan seems to have prevailed in terms of running at least the news operation. But yeah, I have no insights.
Yeah, I think correctly, the children are not the ones that are duking it out. It's Rupert who is trying to bust the trust because he wants Lachlan to be able to take over the entire media operation.
Yes, the question or the follow-up was something to the effect of, is it Rupert, that Rupert is the one agitating to break the trust that he had set up for his children so that yeah, that's right. When is it irrevocable? Gosh, do I have to say that on TV? I will practice in the sound room before I have to say irrevocable. Yeah. So, that and suspicious, I can't say on TV because it gets stuck. Hey, there I said it. I should.
This is a question about procedures in TV broadcasting. It used to be that when the news came on, the weatherman came on initially and gave you a little brief summary, and then he reported or she reported, a weather person reported the weather. Now all the stations in Richmond seem to be competing to see how many weather people they can handle, and also to give, Channel 12 gives you weather every 10 minutes.
Wow.
And your news time is limited anyway, and it just drives me nuts to hear weather 4 times in however many minutes you have to do the news. Is weather that important to an audience?
Is weather that important is the question, and I'm glad just from your comments about Channel 12, you're clearly a discerning news consumer. So the short answer is yes. If you think about all the news sources that I mentioned, you're not waiting around till 6 o'clock to see Bill Fitzgerald necessarily tell you, I mean, hopefully he's going to tell you some stories you weren't aware about, but bigger stories you might have already found out about, but everyone does tune in for the weather. That's something that you can't really farm out. You can't, I know there's an algorithm for it, and the National Weather Service can provide a really detailed, localized weather report, but that personality, the main weather personality, is a driver of viewers. So the short answer is yes. To the degree that you mentioned, I don't know. I mean, 12 has good ratings. They're a worthy competitor, absolutely. So is that the reason? I'm not sure, but I know it's frustrating if you're looking for news and you're not necessarily getting it when you want it. So, I mean, but I would have to defer and say yes. Whether that's hopefully Enzo's not recording this because Zach will never let me hear the end of it. Zach, we're more important than you are, except the viewers might disagree because they like a very sweet pup who recently passed on. So anyway, I hope that answered your question. I'm sure it's frustrating.
Zach is great, and so was Walter. Stanley's taking his
Thank you.
I'm new here to Delaware. I moved here 4 years to Virginia. I moved here 4 years ago from northern Delaware. So for me, the news is also informative as to what is the geography, what is the culture. I certainly would like more maps in some of our local presentations, but also I appreciate your reporting on delivering books to children, for example, some of the housing problems, as well as the local politics. So I hope you all can continue that.
Well, thank you. Not exactly a question, but I do appreciate your comments about that we have a company-wide book campaign called Give a Child a Book. And as you all know, the Richmond community is so giving. I should say the Central Virginia community is so giving that there are many causes that, for whatever reason, may be near and dear to people I work with and obviously to our community. And that book campaign is one of them. The housing issues, boy, that's a thorny one. I'm not going to get on a digression, but my take is we have to figure out a way to make housing more affordable, right? That's the short answer. You have cities, and the bigger the city, the more popular the city. Think of New York, San Fran, LA. The first responders, the backbone of the economy, backbone of the community, teachers, cannot afford to live in those places. So your staff workers, if you're in the hospitality business, cannot live in those areas. We have to find a solution. But I was just thinking, as we progress, my family and I have moved, as I mentioned, all those jobs we've had. We bought, I don't even know, 7, 8 houses along the way ever since our first purchase in New York City. And I have a house in Henrico. Am I willing to say, sure, put a multifamily apartment unit on my street? I would think, wait a minute, this house I bought, what's going to happen to the property values? That's what it gets down to, though. How are we going to make housing affordable? Because I don't want my investment affected adversely, but what are we going to do? Anyway, we're not going to get an answer here. We're talking about other stuff, but that is the thorniest of thorny problems. So anyway, is there anything else? Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, it's going to be a tough one. Barbara Fisk.
Is there any truth to the statement that money always wins the election? First question. Second question, how do you motivate our citizens to vote?
Those are two excellent questions. Generally speaking, money, as we all know, has a huge impact. There are a number of races. In fact, there was one just in the last cycle, in the 24 election, where one candidate, it was a House race, I think, one candidate, but let me step back. If you're and most districts are, if not specifically gerrymandered, most districts, for example, at the congressional level, are safe. You'll hear every cycle, there are, of the 438 House races, 20 are competitive, or something like that. So in that case, money's not necessarily going to turn the tide. There were two prominent races last time where someone outraised somebody like in the millions to $100,000. And that $100,000 person was something of a neophyte and won. So there are exceptions, but generally speaking, yes, money does win. I was just at a hearing yesterday for a zoning or an off-track gaming parlor asking the Racing Commission for a license. And one of the locals, one of the neighbors who spoke up and said, I don't want this in my backyard, and there were 8 or 10 others that spoke. Afterwards, he said, money always wins. We're just, a handful, 300 neighbors who had signed a petition who wanted to have a public hearing, but we don't have the money that this gaming parlor company has. So yes to money being a huge factor. The other question is, how do you motivate people? Motivation comes in many ways, some of them helpful, some of them not. I asked you, whatever news source you watch, to at least be aware that the other side of whatever issue, there are some basic points that deserve hearing. But if what you're watching is making you so angry, that might get you to the polls. You're already motivated because you're angry. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to the polls with the full story. On the other hand, the flip side of that is apathy. I know two knuckleheads who I would like to get with a cattle prod out the door. I make them vote every year, but they're just like, oh, my vote doesn't count, or this doesn't matter. And I'm like, of course it matters. You can't complain if you don't vote. You cannot take part in the conversation if you don't vote. So the trick for people like me who are trying to motivate, wouldn't it be great if there are 8.5 million Virginians and there are, 5 million of them who are older than 18, 6 million? Wouldn't it be great if 6 million people voted? It would be. But you've got to find the key to motivating. Why should I vote? Well, because you like your school, right? Are you worried about funding for that school? Are you worried about keeping your favorite teachers? There's always something that you're going to be interested in that's at stake. So again, it's a great reminder, Barbara, that we've got to find the reasons other than this loud person is saying this loud person is saying that. I don't know, they're both loud. It's really, you've got to find the key to make sure that somebody knows what's at stake. And if I'm in a senior living community, I know I care about senior issues. I know I care about housing. I know I care about protecting Social Security and Medicare. So find the key. Make somebody care, because they might not know it, but there's something affecting them out there that's at stake. I feel like I've been talking all the time. My kids would say, Dad, just stop. They say that all the time, though, so I don't. But any other questions? Problems? Complaints? Take them to the judge. So I also want to give a warm thanks to Sally Wood, and I hope for a speedy recovery, because, like I said, she graciously came up to me at the U of R event, and this is my red letter day. It's not the full red letter day, but it's just as red as the other event would have been, so thank you.
And we thank Bill very, very much for joining us today, helping us to understand what's going on in our community and getting us ready to vote. Have a great day.